Hello everyone, it's Dennie here for the SLA Europe podcast. Today I'm joined by Ulla de Stricker, who is the co-author with Jill Hurst-Wahl of the new book, The Information and Knowledge Professional's Career Handbook, Define and Create Your Success. Today, over Skype, I'm joined by Ulla. Hi Ulla.
Hi.
I'm very pleased to have you on the podcast, and next time I'll be speaking to your co-author, Jill. And I've been very fortunate to get a review copy of your book, and I read it during my commute over the past week or so. And I must say, it's a book that I wanted to give to every student I've met in the past years. Could you just briefly explain what the book is about and why did you write it?
Thank you for saying that, Dennie. It was, in fact, our intention that the book would end up being an evergreen graduation present for those who are new to the profession. Mm-hmm. And so, another way to say, why did we write this book, or why did this book need to happen, is that Jill and I are natural mentors. Mm-hmm. It's just in our personalities that we end up in situations where we speak to our younger peers about their aspirations and their careers. And so we had that, I'm sure you're familiar with that moment when you look at each other and say, why don't we just write it all down? Mm-hmm. So we decided to write it all down. All the things we've been saying in formal speeches, informal conversations through the years might as well just go down. And of course, being somewhat senior, we have the benefit of being able to draw on many years of individual experience. And so the book is definitely an indication of what we have experienced personally. And I should hasten to say that we don't want anyone to think the book is a recipe for how to get a job. Yeah. Much rather, the book is a recipe for how to succeed once you got it.
Yeah, and that's, I think, a good point there. It's, there is no silver bullet there, but with the book, I think you're giving people enough, tools and guidelines, and also nice anecdotes or personal thoughts, how it may work.
In a way, we wanted to make sure we put our personal stamp on the book, and we are very cognizant that in graduate school, there isn't a lot of time to focus on some of the more subtle aspects of work. So we decided we would pay attention in the book to some of the considerations that tend not to be discussed in great detail while one is busy educating oneself. And there would be things like getting along with people, planning ahead, navigating corporate psychology, that sort of thing. Those topics are kind of vague and soft around the edges, but that doesn't make them any less necessary in terms of crafting a successful career. And that's why we wanted to make sure we brought some attention to some of these softer skill areas.
Yes, and if we look at the chapters, we can discuss them all in a brief podcast. One of the things that struck me was, for example, about creating a resume, where you basically say, well, it's about creating a story. Could you explain to our listeners what you mean by that?
Yes, I can. I have been the sole occupant of the career committee on SLA Toronto chapter for longer than I can remember. And so I live and breathe resumes. And not a week goes by I don't see several of them. Every year I'm honored to partake in the resume clinic and so on. So I am very, very familiar with the struggles everyone undertakes to create a resume. And so we felt it was important to convey in the book how one can go about creating that compelling sales instrument, because that's what a resume actually is, and do so in a way that is going to serve us as we plan our careers. There is a lot of conflicting advice out there, but I thought, why don't we just in the book put down the basics? Here is a recipe. You need to put these pieces of information in this sequence, etc. And there are some items, as I'm sure you noticed, some items of advice we give, not necessarily mentioned in most mainstream resume books.
Yeah, I think one of the concepts that struck me that you gave as piece of advice is something called the tagline. And
that is right.
Yeah, tell us.
And I came up with that notion after having read, let's just say 1,000 or so resumes. Mm-hmm. And it struck me that the reader of a resume has to work hard to understand the professional essence, as I call it, of the resume submitter. So I thought, well, if companies can have taglines,
yep.
we all can probably reel off what is Allstate's tagline and what is Holiday Inn's and so on and so forth. Some of the major international brands have taglines we all have internalized and we understand. Why can't an individual, a professional, have a tagline that encapsulates the essence of what is professionally offered? So, for example, you, Dennie, if I had to come up with a tagline for you as a professional, the words pioneering and thought leader would be in there.
Okay.
So, in other words, if I were to use 5 or 7 words to indicate who you are as a professional in 10 seconds or less, I would pick some words that would give another individual who might not know who you are an instant sense of, oh, that's the kind of person he is. And so, for example, a recent graduate could consider a tag including significant Web 2.0 expertise, and a seasoned manager could consider words like accomplished change agent. Such formulations give the resume reader a teaser, if you will, or a taste of what is this type of professional I'm reading about. It'll also, I imagine, serve to weed out, let's say, an application that is not a good match with the particular opening in question.
Yeah, I liked it because usually the resume is like quite long, but it all comes down to what stays in your memory about that person.
and if I may borrow from the Ford Motor Company and say, job 1 is to grab the reader's attention.
Yep.
Job 2 is to demonstrate why the attention was worthwhile.
Yep.
So in the physical layout, and I'll mention in a second that, of course, sometimes we don't worry about that when we apply online, but if we have a physical resume, we want to use the layout, the appearance, the amount of white space, and the selection of fonts, and so on and so forth. We want to use all those means to grab the reader's attention such that he or she says, oh, I want to read this. And then we want to substantiate and justify the reader's effort by providing all the necessary information to have the reader come to the conclusion, oh, I have to have one of these in my staff. So, in a way, when I said sales instrument, I mean that very seriously. Our resume is the means by which we are going to be selling ourselves and our offerings now as perhaps recent graduates, but also throughout our careers. And that's naturally why we never have one resume, we have dozens. As we age and as we apply for different roles, each resume is, of course, tweaked.
Good point. And I would almost say, everyone, even while you have a job, make sure you have a tagline. You just ask your colleagues, how would you refer to, so and so. And I think if you ask maybe 10 people, you'll find some common words that you can work around.
That's a very good point, and I make it often when I speak to students. I say we are probably the worst possible authors of our own resumes because we are blind sometimes to our own strengths. And so it certainly took other people telling me what they thought my key characteristics were before I fully internalized and accepted that that's in fact what they are. I think we would take for granted certain characteristics about ourselves, but others don't.
Yep.
And that's why it's very helpful to ask other people. In the book, we try to show what we mean, and so with specific reference to the chapter on resumes, we show physical images of what we believe are crisp and engaging-looking documents, and that is our attempt at helping. However, we should say that because we are natural mentors, as I mentioned, Jill and I are very receptive to individual approaches from those readers who may wish to speak with us specifically.
While speaking of resumes, you also mentioned 3 common myths. Can you share those myths with us?
There are myths surrounding how long a resume can be, myths surrounding what you must account for in your past life, and what of your personal interests and pursuits you must account for. And I would say, no, you don't owe an accounting of your personal interests, nor do you owe the reader a complete, ungapped accounting for everything you've ever done in your whole life. Remember, the resume is a sales instrument, and it's supposed to feature what you are able to offer professionally. You don't have to account for the fact that you took 2 years off to travel in Asia or something like that. If you want to say so in the cover letter, that's fine, but there is not a need for accounting. But I understand that some people feel, if I leave a couple of years out, will the reader feel that I'm hiding something? There are many ways to address that. One thing I forgot to put in the book, I admit now, is the objective statement. It is a brutal truth that most employers are less concerned about the applicant's objectives than they are about their own objectives. So I would just say, why don't we just simply avoid wasting valuable real estate on a resume by putting that? And that actually brings me to another key piece of the book, which is what I call the business case thinking.
Oh, yes.
In everything we do as professionals, I very much believe that we need to think as a business, put ourselves in the shoes of the decision makers. What would make sense to the person who's in charge of making decisions right now? And that has to do with the fact that, in particular, as one comes out of an academic program, what is inherently good, in my opinion, may not be a decision a business owner or a manager may wish to make for any number of reasons. And that can be a hard transition. I know it was difficult for me earlier on in my career to adopt the, shall we say, hard-nosed approach that says, well, does this particular direction make business sense? It may make emotional sense, but does it make business sense?
Yeah, I run into that a lot. I work for a corporate, and even there, it's often like, we do this. We have a collection of ebooks because people need to research, and I always say no. We have to within 3 lines or 4 lines be able that if the company has strategic goals, within 4 lines you have to pin your projects or your services to the company's objectives, because if you don't do it for that,
so true.
Yeah. But it's hard. You have to practice that.
Realize that good ideas do not sell themselves. They have to be sold.
Yep.
And in many cases, the decision makers we are approaching have many other competing priorities and many other good ideas submitted by others. So there's a discipline and a skill associated with how to express a particular project or investment in terms that will clearly demonstrate they are aligned, or that the proposal is aligned with the objectives, the strategies, the long-term plans, and so on and so forth of those who have the hard decisions to make. It's the, I guess, simple way of putting it is the what's in it for me thinking needs to infuse everything we do. And so Jill and I come across a lot of students who are extremely passionate about what they do, and we love that because it's very inspiring. And what we just want to add here is, to the passion must be added some discipline in terms of statistics, what are others doing, lessons learned in others, similar environments, etc., etc. In other words, we want to bolster the argument so that it doesn't stand alone. And I should say, I did actually write an entire book about business cases. It was published by the American Library Association a couple of years ago, but I've taken the nuggets and the essence of the message and stuck it in the chapter 9 by way of illustrating that whenever we are attempting to get other people around to our way of thinking, there is a particular way of succeeding, and it's not all that hard once you get it down. So there it is for emulation.
That's really, I think, a key nugget there that we should all take up. That whenever you have a good idea and you feel a lot of passion, enthusiasm will go a long way. But in the end, it needs more to be accepted by management or people who have the monetary or political forces in our organization.
Very much so. And this doesn't suggest that we should not use our, shall we say, reputation and social capital as one of the weighty arguments or one of the reasons why somebody would listen to us. In fact, social capital is a big theme for Jill and for me as we speak to our colleagues. As I said, our natural roles have been to encourage others to be active professionally, and we never tire of encouraging others to join associations, take up roles, run for office, give back to the profession. It's amazing how much more you get out of giving And so we make that point wherever we can, and so we took an entire chapter to speak for the benefits of being professionally visible and professionally active. One could never stop commenting on the benefits of having a profile, being recognized in the profession generally. And so for those who might say, oh, but I have a lot of time, and so on, I'm not sure I can devote the time, we say it's almost as if you can't afford not to participate in the appropriate associations and so on and so forth. So we just, we say it all the time, and in the book it is as well, don't even think about it. Just do it, like the Nike slogan. Yep. Once started, everyone comes around and says, oh yeah, that really was a good idea. So we just say, there's no argument. You must participate in your appropriate professional group, and you will, number one, love it. Number two, you'll get a lot of professional benefit from it in terms of immediate job openings and so on, certainly, yes. But long term, it's amazing what twists and turns your career can take because of all the connections you make as you are busy in your professional association.
It's almost like karma.
Yeah.
Okay, Ulla, I think we could talk for maybe an hour longer, but I want to be cautious of the time of our audience. So I really want to thank you for joining me during this interview. For all our listeners, on the blog, www.sla-europe.org/blog, you will find the entry about the podcast with all the links to Ulla's resume, to Jill's resume, links where you can buy the book, and I can really recommend everyone at least to take a look in the book. Ulla, once again, thank you very much. And
I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you, and I hope to see you at the next conference.
Who knows? Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.